Okay, this is working beautifully.
Ready to go? Ready to go? I now call the meeting to order. I'm Robert Mujica, State Budget Director, and the Governor has designated me to chair today's meeting. I'm going to welcome the members of the board, and I'd like to note that Doreen and Sarah is here, Mark Rizal, Jay Lifton, observer for the Assembly Minority Leader Brian Kolb, Mark Rizal is observer for the City Council Minority Leader Stephen Mateo, and Doreen and Sarah observer for the Senate Majority Leader John Flanagan, who's also present. I will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the last annual meeting, which was held on August 4th, 2015. These meetings were previously distributed to the board. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes? Motion, second. Motion is approved. The next item on the agenda is for the financial plan of fiscal years 2017 to 2020. Mr. Mayor, I understand that you will present the city's four-year financial plan.
Thank you very much, Chair Mujica. Thank you for the opportunity to be with all of you and to present this information. I want to acknowledge and thank the members of the board for all they do for the City of New York and the State of New York. And I want to particularly single out my colleagues, State Controller Tom DiNapoli and City Controller Scott Stringer, both of whom we consider crucial partners in the work we do. Thanks to the private members, Jeff Hallis, John Levin, and both here today, and Lawrence Golub, who isn't with us today, but we appreciate his efforts as well. And thanks to the Acting Executive Director, Jeffrey Summer, for your continued good work. Since I appeared last before you, our administration has deepened our commitment to progressive and honest and responsible stewardship of the city's finances. We've continued to invest to create a stronger, more resilient, more equitable city while taking measures to protect our long-term fiscal health. Fiscal prudence and sound management underpin every decision we make, and they're the foundation of our fiscal 17 budget, developed and adopted in partnership, real partnership with the New York City Council. Proud to say we delivered not just a strong budget, but the earliest budget in the last 15 years. I want to thank members of my team who played a crucial role in that process. First Deputy Mayor Tony Shuris, Budget Director Dean Vulahan, and our Commissioner for the Office of Labor Relations, Bob Lynn. All of them, I think, did an extraordinary job, and I thank them. I want to begin today by giving you a broad accounting of the City of New York's financial health, which continues to be very strong, we're pleased to say. The most important resource that drives New York City's economy is the hard work and talent of 8.5 million, now over 8.5 million New Yorkers. Our job in government is to provide them with a safe and growing city. We're doing just that. Over the past 5 years, our population has risen at the fastest rate since the 1920s. Population growth is happening in all 5 boroughs. New York City is now home to an all-time high of 4.3 million jobs. Over the past 2 full years, the city added 249,000 jobs, the highest 2-year gain ever. Job growth in New York City over the past 2 years was higher than in all but 3 states, California, Texas, and Florida. And tourism, which is such an important part of our economy, has grown over the past 6 years with a record number of more than 58 million visitors in 2015. Many believe that number will get close to 60 million in the year of 2016. Yet as our local economy thrives, we cannot ignore that the larger economies around us are sending worrying signs, including the recent events in Europe and falling corporate profits. Our monitors have raised concerns about economic uncertainty, and we share their caution. We have consistently maintained cautious revenue and debt projections and manageable out-year gaps, as well as setting aside historic reserves and continuing to seek savings at all times. In partnership with the City Council, we added $250 million to the Retiree Health Benefit Trust Fund in fiscal year 17 adopted budget to bring it to a total of $3.9 billion. I want to point out that $3.3 billion of that number is the result of actions taken since this administration came into office. For the first time ever, we have added to the Retiree Health Benefit Trust Fund for 3 years in a row. First time that's ever happened in the city. Something we know is of particular importance to the private members of the board. We're also maintaining the general reserve, the city's precautionary savings for expenses, at $1 billion annually across all 4 years of the financial plan. Traditionally, this reserve was held at less than a third of that number, and it's important to recall the size of this reserve when we look at our out-year gaps. And we're now in the second year of the city's first ever capital stabilization reserve, $500 million. We created this new reserve to protect our ability to make capital investments. Our management of the city's budget has continued to result in the highest credit ratings in New York City's history. Our citywide savings program identified $2.8 billion in savings over the preliminary, executive, and adopted budgets. For example, we found added efficiency by coordinating homeless services through the Human Resources Administration and Department of Homeless Services to achieve $33 million in operating savings per year. And this is on top of the unprecedented healthcare savings we are achieving through our responsible collaborative settlement of more than 90% of labor contracts for our workforce. Some concrete ways we're achieving these savings include, one, asking employees to accept higher emergency room co-pays and helping them manage chronic conditions like diabetes, which encourage an emphasis on more effective and economical preventative care. Second, we've already met our fiscal 2015 healthcare savings target of $400 million and our fiscal 16 target of $700 million. And we are certain, achieve our healthcare savings goal of $1 billion for 2017. We'll see guaranteed savings of $3.4 billion through fiscal 18, with $1.3 billion in savings every year thereafter. And on top of that, I've called on city agencies to find additional savings for this November for the next budget modification. So as we watch the economy, and as we carefully manage the city's finances, at the same time we're making the kinds of investments we believe are crucial to the economic strength of New York City's future and what will matter to over 8.5 million people. Major investments, first of all, in public safety. Obviously today, very proud to announce our incoming police commissioner, Jimmy O'Neill, who will follow up on what Bill Bratton has started. We're very, very pleased that he will be taking over the NYPD. And he comes in at a point where these investments are already being fully felt. With the leadership and the support of the City Council, by the end of this year, there will be 2,000 more police officers on our streets, between new officers that we're hiring and officers that will go on patrol because of civilianization. And on top of that, our officers will be better equipped. Much more technology, smart devices, shot spotter and other tools, bullet-resistant vests and other protective gear that our officers have not had in the past, and the best training in the world and the most consistent and active training of our police force. An example of the types of new equipment, just this last week, we announced that officers will all have ballistic helmets, heavy vests, and ballistic armor in their cars to help them deal with active shooter situations. Those are all new and higher levels of gear than have been previously available to our officers. A year ago, we approved money for something that New York City had never had before, 500 plus officers who are now part of our critical response command. This was something that was based on a number of developments over recent years, a number of thoughts within the law enforcement community, but was crystallized by the attacks in Paris at the beginning of 2015, that we needed a stronger and dedicated anti-terror force. So 500 plus officers who are full-time members of Critical Response Command, highly trained, well-armed for counter-terror duty. We've also made major investments in the fight against inequality. We've launched the nation's largest, most comprehensive affordable housing agenda, which is ahead of schedule on its way to building and preserving 200,000 affordable apartments over 10 years. With the support of New York State, in the last 2 years, we have created free, high-quality, full-day pre-K seats for every New York City family that wants one. And this school year just ended, we put almost 68,500 4-year-olds on the path to academic success. We've rolled out our equity and excellence vision for our public schools, including advanced placement tests and courses, advanced placement courses in all our public high schools, including some that have never had any in the past. Algebra for all for our middle schoolers, one of our most popular initiatives among our students, Mr. Chairman, Algebra for All. the Computer Science for All initiative, which will reach students at every grade level, providing computer science education integrated fully into the curriculum. Yesterday, we were also very, very pleased to announce that both our math and English test scores were up across the city. English score is jumping more than 7% over the last year and literally improving in every one of our 32 local school districts. We're funding the largest and most comprehensive response to the persistent problem of homelessness in any administration in New York City's history. We project that without the investments we've made, that there would be almost 13,000 more people in our shelters than are there today at this point. Thank God our shelter population has stabilized, but there's much more work to be done. On other fronts, healthcare institutions, particularly those that help large Medicaid and uninsured populations, are facing growing financial pressures, not only in New York City, all over the country. And here in the city, we have Health and Hospitals, the largest municipal hospital group in the nation and the foundation of New York City's entire healthcare system. 2014, Health and Hospitals, 11 hospitals, and more than 70 community-based clinics received nearly 5 million patient visits and treated almost 1 in 6 New Yorkers. And of the system's 1.2 million patients, 45% are on Medicaid and 30% are entirely uninsured. That is part of why the system is now facing a projected operating gap of $1.8 billion by 2020. And certainly the significant changes that have happened in delivery of health care and the planned reduction in charity care by the federal government are also major contributing factors. So, working closely with Health and Hospitals, the city has created a 4-year plan to transform the system and ensure it can serve all New Yorkers for years to come. Our plan will close the $1.8 billion gap through $700 million in expense savings and $1.1 billion in new revenue. This will require, obviously, cooperation with all of our partners in government, and certainly our labor force as well. We're confident we can achieve these goals, and we've had very, very positive and productive conversations with the state and the federal government and our colleagues in labor. Now I'd like to turn to some major investments we've made in the area of infrastructure, certainly on all of our minds and crucial to our future. We're investing in roads and bridges, including a high level of repaving of roadways and, of course, keeping our bridges in a state of good repair. We're making sure our city is resilient in the face of climate change. We're ensuring that New Yorkers will have access to clean drinking water by taking steps, for example, getting our third water tunnel online and available so we have additional redundancy in our system. On other fronts, we're significantly increasing the number of school seats to keep pace with the growing population. We're making sure that as we build new affordable housing, I mentioned earlier, it comes with the parks and the transit, the schools, and the other infrastructure it requires, and we've set aside resources to achieve that. And as we borrow for capital projects such as these, we're maintaining our long-standing city benchmark of keeping debt service below 15% of city tax revenues. To conclude, I want to thank the Financial Control Board for helping to make New York City strong. Our administration's guiding values, fiscal responsibility, progressive government, honest and transparent budgeting, are the foundation of everything we do. After 2.5 years, we have a track record of disciplined and effective fiscal and programmatic management. You can see it in the strategic investments we've made that have kept our city safe and growing economically and strong, and in the savings we have demanded and found, and finally in the historic reserves we have continued to set aside. Very much appreciate this opportunity to share this information with you today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Controller DiNapoli, do you have any comments on the city's financial plan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you, if I could. Thanks to Mayor de Blasio for your report to the board. I'm joined by Ken Bleiweiss, our Deputy Controller for New York City. He and his team have prepared our review of the financial plan of the City of New York. Copies are available for all the members of this board and certainly for the public as well. I'd like to offer these comments for the record from the Office of State Controller. The city ended fiscal year 2016 with a surplus of $4 billion, which is the largest since 2008. The surplus, which was used to balance the 2017 budget, resulted from unanticipated tax revenues, debt service savings, a citywide savings program, and a drawdown of unneeded reserves. Balancing the city's budget in recent years has been aided by strong economic growth and the city's conservative approach to forecasting tax revenues. While the city's economy is doing well today, there are reasons to be concerned about the future. The Chinese economy has its problems, and the United Kingdom's intention to exit the European Union has increased economic uncertainty. While the U.S. continues to add jobs, job growth during the first half of 2016 was the slowest since 2010. New York City had record job growth over the past 2 years, but job growth has slowed in 2016. In addition, tax collections are slowing. Last year, tax collections grew by 3.6% after growing by an average of 6.9% during the 5 prior years. The city expects collections to slow further to 1.8% in fiscal year 2017. Current trends also do not bode well for the securities industry, which is an important part of the city's economy. Profits declined by nearly 50% in the first quarter, revenues declined by 10%, and the securities industry in New York City has resumed downsizing. The city's cautious approach to 2017 is warranted, given these economic risks. The city's revenue forecasts for subsequent years, however, are less conservative and more vulnerable to an economic setback. City-funded spending is projected to grow by 4.2% annually during the financial plan period, more than twice the inflation rate. Debt service is projected to increase by 38%, which reflects a large expansion in the capital program as well as the city's conservative interest rate assumptions. Health insurance costs are projected to rise by 34%. Targeted investments in education, health, and homeless services have also contributed to the growth in spending. Since spending is expected to exceed revenues, the city projects budget gaps of $2.8 billion in 2018, $2.9 billion in 2019, and $2.3 billion in 2020. These gaps are relatively small as a share of city fund revenues and are manageable under current conditions. The budgets for those years include a general reserve of $1 billion, which, if unneeded for other purposes, could be used to narrow the gaps. My staff, however, has identified budget risks that could increase the size of the out-year gaps. In addition, the Health and Hospitals Corporation continues to face serious financial challenges and could require additional city assistance. The city should keep close track of these budget risks and adjust its financial plan as needed. Prudently, the mayor and the city council have increased the city's reserves in recent years. The city raised the general reserve to a record level of $1 billion in 2015, and last year created a $500 million capital stabilization reserve. The city has also replenished the Retiree Health Benefits Trust